Welcome back to another River Valley Railway video. This one goes out to Kevin Brown, who made a comment in my last one wanting to know how long I've been doing this. I had to go back and look. I thought it was only a couple of years. It's actually been 3. And I'm going to take you on a pictorial tour of how I started again, why I started again, where I came from, in the construction process, and where we are right now. So I finally decided to unpack all the boxes I had from moving between Nevada and Michigan, and I found a box of old N-scale train cars and a little Bachmann locomotive that I knew didn't run. And I thought, you know what, that'd be kind of fun. I'll just make a little switching layout and I'll play with some of these cars. I just need to get an engine and some track. So I did that. I bought a little shelf board and stuck it on my dresser in my bedroom and made a little yard to switch cars with. Well, after a while, I got bored with that. So I decided to make a 2x4 foot oval. So I went out and got some wood and painted it up green because I didn't figure I was going to do any scenery. And I made this little 2x4 oval layout with a switchback and a place to store some cars. Well, that was fun for a while. And then thanks to Steve's Trains, I think is where I originally saw that video on how he uses car cards and deals them out to figure out how to build trains. That's how I originally got my car card idea. So check out Steve's Trains channel on YouTube. He builds a lot of model railroads and has some good tips as well. So after I got tired of this little oval for a while, I decided, I wasn't tired of it yet. I decided, let's start doing some buildings. So my sister was getting involved, saying, well, I can build you kits. Just tell me what you want built. And so she started building some model kits and buying me some stuff for like Christmas and stuff. These are cheap little Outland buildings here, and that's an Outland building, and that's a Bachmann coaling tower. This is one of those pre-built Bachmann buildings, along with this one here, the station. These are Outland buildings in the back, and there you go. I don't know why I wired this up for 2-cab control at the time, but it is what it is, and I'm glad I did in the long term. So then I decided to get the old board out from the yard and attach that by just punching a hole through the backdrop so that I would have a place for my trains to go and store cars. Well, so I worked on that for a while, and then I painted that board green and I added a few more tracks, and then started buying cars on eBay. Some cars and engines to start building up my rolling stock collection. But then I realized that if you're going to build modules, they need to be uniform. This is the old yard, a 1/2-inch piece of shelf board on 1x2, and this is the 2x4 layout, 3/8 on 1x3s. So we had to do some finagling to get those to match up. But then after a while, I decided that the trains still weren't going anywhere. And I had this old wooden tool chest that my father had made back in the 70s. It weighed like 200 pounds getting that thing off the wall. I figured, that's got a lot of real good clear wood on it. I'm just going to repurpose all that wood and expand my train layout. Because I am on a budget, So these are the 2 back pieces. I think those are the back pieces. I can't remember. So this is what I had at the point. It's just the 2x4 module sitting on a table with the yard added to it. And then I realized that I got more space down here in the basement. I can go to town down here, so I can expand my train. So I decided I'd move the yard over here behind me, and then I would have some main line running between the yard and the oval. So I built up 2 more modules and then realized that this original yard shelf thing was just not going to work. We got to take that out of there. So I built a third module section. Actually, you can't really call them modules because they're not uniform. Each one is unique. They just happen to all bolt together. So I guess it's a sectional layout, not a module layout, because when you talk modules, most people think of T-Track stuff, and that is not this. So we have the fairly finished town, and now I've got a way to get around and make a bigger yard over here behind me. So I was thinking, well, I got to make another control panel and all that stuff. And then I decided to get on SCARM, the software to design layouts. And if you notice on my original SCARM here, I'd planned on this being a big mountain with 2 tunnels. So now we got the modules painted. This is all back in the spring of 2023, by the way, the spring and summer of 2023. So now we've got the modules painted, and we're starting to lay out our track. Everything's still on tables, and this is where I decided that I could flush mount my control switches into the 1x3 framing instead of building another control panel that sticks out. So then we decided to start cutting backdrop boards. The backdrop is just foam core, just cheap dollar store foam core. That's all it is, with some spray paint on it. And we got another table, so now we've got our tables all lined up and everything's nice and level. Now we can do our make up our trains in the yard and run around and do some switching here, come into town, do some switching, run around the train, and then pull it back. It's a true out and back layout. And so we worked on that for a while, and now this was my attempt at the corner tunnel. And at this point I realized this tunnel's not going to work because A, I can't make mountains worth a darn as a scenery builder, and B, what happens if you need to do some service inside that tunnel? My art skills of making a removable mountain are next to none. So we are going to scratch that idea and go with hills that they blew apart to get the tracks through, which would make more sense because that mountain wouldn't really be big enough to need a tunnel. They would just blow that apart and put in some rock sheds. So we used painter's tape and crumpled paper to build the frame of our mountain work based on my 1980s old model railroading experience. This is the only way I knew how to build mountains. Pink foam was, I had not been online enough to know that pink foam is what everybody uses these days. Because if you notice, there is not a piece of pink foam anywhere. So I threw some quick paint on these things because the blue was driving me crazy after I covered them with plaster sheets. And I wanted this whole side of the layout to look semi-uniform, like we're leaving a valley area, and even though the track's not actually climbing, we're moving up into the mountains, into this little town that's nestled in the higher country. That is the whole purpose of this layout. And then we would have a little spot here where we could back in coal cars just for another industry. Then I decided, hey, I got more space. I can throw another section between the yard and the curve and give me some yard lead. And then I could put in an industrial park here for even more switching. Hey. So we got out the bolts. And if you see, these sections are bolted together with big, heavy bolts. There's no alignment pins. This is all just basic country engineering. Yeah. No master plan whatsoever. We're just doing this all on the fly. So now I made up another track plan to add in this section, which will have the industrial park. Off to the internet to buy more track because there's no hobby store around here. So now we've got the industrial park put in, and I just block up stuff with whatever I have handy for pretend buildings until I actually get some. And as you can see, this is definitely a construction zone, but we're getting there. So now we've got the backdrop up just to keep the cars from falling onto the floor. And yeah, we're running trains as we build to see what works and what doesn't. So the next thing we did is we're looking at the splice between the town and the coal mine area. And for me, there just wasn't enough. It wasn't hilly enough to justify a coal mine. So I wanted to stick another module between these two. And this is the back side of my elementary school level mountain making. As you can see, it's just plaster sheets over crumpled newspaper and painter's tape. That's all it is. Oh, I wasted a whole bottle of Woodland Scenics bushes on this hill trying to make it look like it was going to be all green. Yeah, those never stayed glued down. And you'll see in later photos that this green hill wasn't going to cut it. Because I hated my rock thing. I'm just terrible at trying to make rocks. It's just awful. But anyway, so now we went to SCARM and we said, okay, on the 3D, if I were to put a big mountain in here with maybe a culvert with a bridge and some water, that would really, really make the distance to the yard look like we're going somewhere. So let's do that. Because right now the track just goes around the backdrop and it looks a little cheesy. So I decided to first paint the backdrops I had, and what I did is I laid them all out in the order they go on the layout, and then I spray painted them all in a row from about 3 feet away because I was trying to get the misty looking cloud effect. I wasn't trying to get actual drawn clouds. Because especially here in Michigan, you get these days where, the sky's blue, but it's more white than blue and it's mixed. Well, that's the look I was going for. And then once I put those up on the layout, well, they actually came out fairly decent and you don't see the seams as badly. So then we're going to make the mountain canyon. My first piece of advice, if you're going to make a mountain canyon out of a modular section, do not use foam core for the thin bottom piece. Go get yourself a piece of real wood like masonite. The foam core over time will start to bend. But I figured the 3-inch drop, the 3 3/8 inch drop from the 1x3 and the 3/8 inch plywood, that would be about 50, 60 feet in end scale. So yeah, that justifies needing a bridge. They wouldn't just fill that in. So this is the module painted with the bridge in place and to make sure that the module length was right for the track to fit. So we fit that all into place before we bolted in anything. Then our next step was to bolt it all together. And now we start making the mountains. And my girlfriend, who's a quilter, told me that she saw online people are using quilt backing with Mod Podge glue to make mountains. I tried this. It's okay if you have a respirator and you aren't sensitive to Mod Podge glue as much as I am, but it worked. The middle part is all Sculptamold. And I just used 2 little pieces of styrofoam out of a TV carton for the bridge abutments. Real cheap. This is not a high-end railroad. This is Podunk Central. That's probably what I should have named it. So here's the end result. We just painted the batting and glued on some bushes and a few trees and threw some washes on the Sculptamold. And if you notice this green here, I got to explain this. You really should read the directions when you're using chemicals. And the Woodland Scenics water resin specifically states, do not apply over untreated plaster. And I found out why. It eats the untreated plaster. But in my case, me being the accidental genius that I am, it just made an absolutely gorgeous rock formation. So I got lucky there. And then I added my first waterfall, which came out too flat as far as texture. And there's been about 4 or 5 different iterations of waterfalls here. Even my sister took a crack at it there for a while. This one, I actually liked the texture of it, but then when I looked at it from a different angle, the water was falling on an angle. Water does not fall on an angle. It falls straight down. But it makes for nice pictures in the background. This was a clear waterfall I'd tried, and then I realized that you couldn't even hardly see the water, and that wouldn't be realistic because every waterfall picture I've ever seen, it's all fuzzy and white. But it makes for a nice picture up close as one of my trains runs over the bridge. So now we've got the original module, the new canyon, the corner, the end, the industrial park, and the yard. But we're still operating an out and back point to loop. Well, there's no reversing loop. You have to run around the train, and then that's why I use diesels. They just pull the train from the long nose first. So got more room, got more wood. Let's see if we can add an outer loop. Well, here's a 2x4 piece of wood, and that's going to fit. And then, yeah, I got room here because I want to make sure I keep enough room around all the shelves because at the time I had moved into this house to take care of my elderly mom. And all of this stuff is all her stuff on the shelves, so I need to be able to access that. So I'm kind of just living rent-free down here in her basement with my train layout. So I got to make sure that I don't infringe upon all her shelves. So yeah, we got room to do this. We can go all the way around this layout with more expansion. Back to the drawing board, literally. Now we have a master plan. A year and a half after I started, this is the mid-2024, or the fall of 2024, I believe. Fall and winter, because boating season was already over. We now have a master plan, including a staging yard, a passing siding, a couple of sidings down here in the new town yet to be named. And so now we have a plan. We can actually build to a plan. Back to the online stores for more Cato Track or Cato Track. My modules are just redneck simple, 3/8-inch plywood over 1x3 frames. There's nothing fancy, and everything is bolted together. So the end town, I decided at some point I got to get off the tables and put some legs under this layout. So I decided, how high do I want it? Well, I've got this new module, so I just started experiment with heights and decided, okay, this is the height we want the whole layout to be. So we're going to put it on 2x2 legs with some cross braces. And this is the height difference between sitting on tables and the height of a real model railroad. I think mine's at 43 inches or 44 inches because I like to sit on like a little bar stool. I can't stand all day, so I don't want it so high I have to stand. But I don't want it so low that I'm sitting down like in an office chair because then, I'm 70 years old, getting out of a chair after sitting there for a few hours, and that becomes an event. So this is the right height. And so our next project, after we get all the expansions on, is to try to jack this puppy up and get it all on its legs. And finally that happened. And as you can see, I'm being very prudent. I got my level out. We're making sure everything is level, because there's no grades to this railroad. We're imagining it to go from a river valley up into a town, climbing into the mountains, up into high country, and the track is dead flat the whole time. Simply because in my old model railroading days, my grades were so horrible, it just made me want to quit. And I did. So then we painted everything again. This is actually going to be flat green when it's all said and done. The reason I use green is I just happen to have a whole gallon bucket of it when I originally started. It wasn't a color I chose at the paint store. It's what I had on hand. Then we went through and we filled all the cracks with filler and sanded all those down. And then I thought, well, how am I going to hide that crack? Because originally I had no plans to do full scenery. To me, the green was close enough for grass, and the track had the road bed, so I didn't need to ballast. This is how it was going to be. Just simple. Yeah. So we decided to put the road right down the middle of the seam, because then when I stripe the road, you won't see the seam so bad. And this is a picture from a little bit later. So the first thing we did was we put in the roads and the pavement. That's all just painted wood, nothing special. And these are all just cheap little outland buildings and a little Bachmann factory that's way too small to be useful for anything other than maybe a little blueprint shop. Yeah, so now we're approaching 2025. We've now got the entire outer loop in. Yeah, the back stretch isn't straight. I never did straighten it, and then I went and ballasted it, so it's never going to be straight. Oh, well. Sue me. So this town, I wasn't sure what I wanted in this town. I knew I was going to want some switching here at some point, because that's the whole purpose of me building this thing, is to switch industries. So I just threw some boxes up and some duct tape for roads. Well, here is an important tip for all you upcoming model railroaders. If you're going to imitate roads temporarily, don't use duct tape. It rips the paint right off your board and causes lots of splinters. And then you'll have to take your hand sander and sand the whole thing back down and repaint it. So don't use duct tape. We also had to add a little shelf expansion to the original 2x4 in order to get this escape track out the back. So this is just another piece of plywood with some 1x3s. And it's got an end board butting it up, and then it's screwed in tightly. It's not bolted; it's screwed in tightly to the original module. And then down there at the back of the layout is another shelf we added in order to get the outer loop around it, because here was the end where the original backdrop was. So we had to add another 6 inches to get this extra outer loop installed. And that allowed us to have a staging yard. And this is its own section back here behind the scenery. That also left me a place to put my workbench, which happens to be a 100-year-old, about 150-pound desk that the local church was throwing out. It was sitting on the street waiting for the dump truck. Well, I ran down there with my hand truck and salvaged it. And it is rock solid. It makes a great workbench. It was already beat up, so there you go. So now we are at the stage where we have an entire outer loop where we can just, if we really want to just turn on trains and watch them run, we've got 60 feet of main line where we can just turn on trains and watch them run. The next thing up was skirting. My sister came up with this one. She goes, hey, if you're just looking for some black stuff, I've got 2 rolls of landscaping mat that the landscapers never used and never took with them. That's all this is black landscaping mat. It works great, and it's just a mini staple gun with some short staples, bap, 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 along the edge. You can take it up, or you can take it down and put it up as many times as you need to, and it falls nice and looks good. So layout's now got skirt, and you can't see its skinny legs. Meanwhile, back at the old town, I decided the station was in a bad spot, so I was going to flip it across the spurs, rip out the parking lot, and here's another tip for you new model railroaders. If you ever decide to make railroad crossings out of poster board and super glue, don't do it. You will never get this stuff back off without a chisel. Yeah, that was a lesson well learned. That took about 2 days of some words that are not suitable for children to get all that cleaned up. Never look under someone's layout unless they ask you to, because it could possibly look like this. This is what happens when you expand a layout, then you expand a layout, then you just start getting wires, wagoed to wires, wagoed to wires. But right now, to be honest with you, it's all working. So I'm leaving it alone. Actually, what I do is I run a cab A and a cab B main wire from section to section, and then each section taps off of those for the block power in that section. And then I run a separate turnout power feeder off of a terminal strip. And so there are two wall warts, 12-volt wall warts, powering the turnout power, one on each side, so that all the turnouts are wired and everything is on a master switch. I can turn the whole layout off, including the overhead lighting, with one switch, so I know for a fact the power is off. And in fact, even the power strip to my workbench is attached to that master switch. So if I'm an idiot and I leave my solder gun on, it won't matter, because when I'm done and the layout's off, that solder gun will be turned off as well. This is how I do my controls now, just flush mounted right into the framing. I use a big saw bit to cut a hole large enough for the toggle switch, and then just use I think those are 2 millimeter thick sheet plastic from Hobby Lobby. I think those are 2.5 by 2, and it makes a nice switch cover, nice and solid. And then if I ever need to get to the wiring of any particular switch, 4 screws, and it's right there. And that way I don't have to crawl under the layout. This is why I have trees along the edge of my layout. Early on, I ruined my Pacific Fruit Express piggyback flat car when it got brushed off the layout and it went smack on the floor. The semi-trailer was salvageable. The railroad car was not. So to prevent that from happening in the future, I have a tree guard along the edge of my layout. And this particular train hit a ladybug, believe it or not. And if it hadn't been for those trees, I probably would have lost that covered hopper. Always have some kind of Easter egg in your layout. No matter what you're doing, big, small, you got to have an Easter egg. This poor guy is trying to get his stupid dog to come down off the hill. You got to have something like that in your layout just to keep it fun. This is the collection of Conrail locomotives I have acquired to run the River Valley Railway. All bought on used on eBay. If you stick with Atlas, Kato, you can't go wrong. They're pretty bulletproof and easy to fix. But if you're going to buy locomotives on eBay, you better know how to take them apart and get them cleaned up and new lubricants put in them, because a lot of them are 20, 30 years old, and you don't just want to run them. Even if they say new, never run, well, if it's been sitting there for 30 years, you got to get that old lubricant and grease out of there and get it all fresh as a daisy. So my two killer deals off of eBay was this RSD 15 for $25 and this Alco 420 for $30. The RSD 15 had issues. It was soaked in oil. The guy apparently thought the more oil you put to it, the better it will run. So it had to get totally taken apart and completely rewired. But now these two pull together all the time because they run at almost the exact same speed. And there's no speed matching with DC. There's no DCC in this layout, no pink foam, and no Microtrains couplers. Through the years, especially 2025, I really started doing detailing, like adding signages to the buildings, a lot more trees. As you can tell, I can't paint a straight line on the road, putting in railroad crossing signs, stop signs, all that kind of stuff is time consuming. I'll tell you that right now. When you start to detail a layout, that will eat up a winter in your basement, just detailing a layout. So yeah, this has taken quite some time. And so here it is as we speak. Let's go back. So it's 15 feet long here, and it's 7 feet, actually 6 inches. If you put a tape measure from this backdrop to this backdrop, it's 7 feet 6 inches. So if you were to take like a 4x8 layout and put it in the middle of this space, this doesn't take up much more space than a 4x8 sheet of plywood. The only thing a 4x8 sheet of plywood would give you is larger radius turns. I got 9 3/4 down here on the original one. And this new module I had built, the last one at the end, I used 11 going to 9 3/4, 9 3/4 back to 11 to give it some easement. And it still fit on the 2-foot wide section. And so some quick snapshots of what we have. There's the original town as it is today. There's the canyon with its latest iteration of waterfall. There's the corner with the ugly mountains that I've yet to figure out what to do with in my imitation coal mine. This is what we consider a Midwest town. It's got a plastics chemical facility, a furniture shop, and a recycling plant, a recycling place. We're assuming all their big yard is over here, and so they truck it across the road to dump it in the gondola. Yeah, that's it. It actually is a small layout, believe it or not, so there's not a lot of space for big things. This corner is dedicated to my sister, who built just about every one of these buildings, including this barn, which was a laser cut wood kit. So she wanted a farm. She said, you got to have a farm on your layout somewhere. So I gave her the whole corner to do this farm. And you got pigs in the pen, cows in the field, goats on the hill. They got out. There's ducks over here in the yard and all that kind of good stuff. So shout out to my sister for really helping me, because I cannot build a building worth a darn. So a lot of these buildings she just built, and she asked me if I wanted them painted and weathered or whatever, and I just said, you just do what you want to do. So she didn't know what I wanted, so she just left them pretty much stock out of the box. This is Pine City, where the industrial park is, and all these cheapy buildings in the back are just to make it look like a real town. And then this is a 3D printed building that I tried to paint and did a horrible job on, but at least I got a shipping door cut out of it without totally ruining the building. Let's see, Outland Freight House. The Bachman Station has now moved all the way from the original layout all the way out here to Pine City / Riverport. Our main facility, the headquarters building, an old box car that I just gave up trying to get it to work, is now our maintenance shed. This is engine shop. This, believe it or not, is just a painted blue plastic cap from the paint that painted that backdrop. Scratch-built shed that I actually did. And there's the main yard that holds 30 cars. My sister thought it was hilarious that I was calling this Riverport, so she made me try to put in a little piece of blue water so she could glue in a tugboat with 2 barges. She goes, there, now your railroad cars can say that they're offloading to barges, because he's headed for your dock that you can't see because you don't have any space for it. She scratch built these 2 buildings out of Walther's kit parts. That's a 3D printed building, Walther's cold storage, City Street block. And I don't know where she found that McDonald's, but that seems to be the showpiece of the town there. The dispatch board, there's an entire video on the dispatch system that I just made. My scenery cart, my workbench as is. I'm not cleaning it up, because people who clean up their workbench to take a picture of it are lying. Workbench is rarely clean unless you're a neat freak. The foam core backdrops tend to bend over time. So I made some 1x3 frames for this long section of backdrops to keep those straight. And then the staging yard, which we call Hidden Valley, has our main, what we call heavy shop, even though it's really not big enough to do that. And then a secondary shop, so we can service 3 locomotives at any given time in our dispatch game. This is the staging yard. I've yet to decide if I'm going to do the scenery on it. I would have to try to figure out how to laminate another backdrop into this one. There's a gap between the staging yard section and the River Canyon section where all the wires go through. So this part wouldn't be too bad to hide the wires, but I would have to figure out how to glue a backdrop to a backdrop down there if I were to actually put scenery on all this. But as you can see, there's not a whole lot of access to it anyway. And there you have it. That's my River Valley Railroad. And it started in March of 2023. This is January 2022 or 26. That's where we stand. And so for all of those of you who are curious how it got this way, would I recommend anyone else taking this route? Absolutely not. This was a total fly-by-wire, well, what can I add next type of thing. Would I have built this had I originally designed it this big? Absolutely not. Remember, I started out with just a little 2x4 foot section and was quite happy. If you're wondering why there's cutouts in these backdrops, this is so I can reach over and uncouple cars here. And this is so if we have a problem in the back corner, I can reach over and get to it. If anybody's curious and wants to actually do this layout, this is the parts list. I didn't use all the bumpers. A lot of my bumpers are Walthers add-ons that just glue to the track. But that is the 32 turnouts alone at $25 a piece. You can do the math. But see, the thing of it is, if you were to sit down and add up all the gas you put in your car over a year, you would be in shock. So people who add up all the money they have put into their N scale or their any scale layout, be prepared to be in shock, especially if you've done this over years and you've bought it piece by piece. I suppose I should do this just for insurance purposes, but anyway, there you go. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Have a great day.